Hello friends, William Newell here. And do you know, one of the good things that has come out of the past few years when we couldn't get about the same and go to far away and exotic places and relax on glorious tropical beaches, see the wonders of the world and sail the seven seas. It was, well, many of us had to just settle ourselves and discover more of our own country. And that is exactly what we did. We rediscovered Killarney and Connemara and Tralee, Donegal, and down the whole east coast as far as Hookhead in Waterford. And of course there are lots of places we enjoyed on our own doorstep, so to speak. And you know, as far as scenery is concerned, Ireland is as nice as you'd find anywhere. Now, of course, I know all too well, people will say the weather lets us down every time. But you know, it doesn't rain all the time. We spent 4 glorious days down the east coast in March, and it was wall-to-wall sunshine the entire time. This is Sunrise in Drogheda. The boat tied here is called the Hebble Sand. Built in 1963, it was once a tough, hard-working dredger, and it served faithfully along the ports of this coastline for many years. But here it is, tied up and rotting away. This fine vessel should be sailing proudly out to sea, riding the waves and being useful to its owner. But instead, all it does is just rise and fall with the tide. But that is not what a ship is meant to do. Many of the locals here, they look on it as an eyesore. But actually, from a photographic point of view, I think it adds so much character to the Drogheda harbour. This very impressive structure is the Boyne Viaduct, and I have to admit, it's the main reason I wanted to come to Drogheda. Many people will of course be much more familiar with the other modern bridge over the Boyne. It is also a remarkable piece of engineering, and here we have it from a different angle than you would normally see it when you're travelling down the M1 on the way to Dublin. The Boyne Viaduct carries the main railway between Belfast and Dublin and was once considered one of the wonders of the world. Work began in 1851 and it lasted 4 years, the result of which is a truly remarkable bridge across the Boyne, 100 feet above the river with 12 arches on one side and 3 on the other. It dates back to the days when rail travel was in its heyday. But prior to its construction on the journey to Dublin, travellers were only able to go so far. They had to get off the train on one side, climb down where a wooden crossing had been constructed across the river. Then they had to walk several miles before getting another train, before being able to continue on their journey. But when the Great Viaduct was constructed with foundations that have been sunk to a depth of 43 feet, the Great Gulf, known as the Boyne Valley, was spanned. But I'm going to watch the Belfast Enterprise cross the viaduct on its way to Dublin. You'll excuse me if my hand is a little bit shaky. You know, I was just thinking of the ship, the Hebel Sand, moored at the dockside. A ship that should be launching out on the crest of the wave, enjoying all the glories of ocean life. Instead, all it does is just rise and fall with the tide. And I was thinking of how often we as Christians find ourselves in the same position, not living out our full potential as sons and daughters of the King of Kings, stepping out in faith and following the one who said, "I am the way." Instead, we moor ourselves to the harbour instead of, as Jesus told Peter, launching out into the deep. Jesus said, "I am come that you might have life and have it more abundantly." That's John chapter 10, verse 10. He also says in John 15, verse 11, "I have told you these things so that you may be filled with my joy. Yes, your joy will overflow." Jesus came to give us all we need for life and for living, and life to the full. And yet we so often are just content to be saved and stuck, not depending on Jesus and living life to the full and filled with his joy and basking in the light of his presence, but rather making do with much less and not being useful to him. And like this old dredger, the longer it lies tied up like this, the more it deteriorates, until eventually it may well be past redemption. We don't want our Christian lives to be like that, but rather we want life to the full, as Jesus suggested. But I'm going to take a moment to watch the Enterprise. It's passing through again, only this time it's going in a different direction. This is our hotel room. We had a veranda, and you're welcome to join me. It looks towards the viaduct spanning across the Boyne Valley here in Drogheda. Before the viaduct, the two sides of the railway were separated and there was no way of them coming together until, of course, this great viaduct was constructed. And that bridged the gulf. I am always reminded of another great gulf, the gulf between us and God. At one time we were separated from God because of our sin. But when Jesus died, he spanned the gulf that separated us from God. And now we have full access into God's presence. But I'm going to let you into a secret. Here's what I done. I walked up to the station at the top of the viaduct on the Dublin side, and I asked if I would be allowed out to walk onto the viaduct, even a little bit. And of course, I was told no. Such a thing would not be allowed under any circumstances. But Jesus will never say no to anyone who is willing to repent of their sins and believe in him. He is the bridge that gives us access right into the Father's presence. Well, I've been about the town all day and the sun is setting. We'll hang about until dark. And I'll see you soon again. Our closing prayer comes from Psalm 139. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in, behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Amen.